Hello, and welcome to the Stand Still podcast. This is an opportunity to hit pause on your busy life as we hear from guests that will inspire you.
Hey Joshua, and all our new listeners, welcome to our first episode of the Stand Still podcast. What'd you think?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's actually great to be here for the first time, especially getting keen for conference coming up. We've got plenty of exciting things to talk about, so it's really good.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for getting on board. I mean, conference is coming up, but it's still three years away, so we'll see how we go. Well, for those who may not know you, which is probably surprising if they don't, but maybe just give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are.
All right, well, I'm Josh, and I'm...
Nice to meet you, Josh.
Oh, thanks, CJ. So I'm originally from New South Wales, grew up there, and recently moved in the last year to Adelaide, and currently go to the Burnside Ecclesia in Adelaide, which has been really good.
Normally, if we're at this point, I'd shake your hand, but that's just not socially acceptable these days. I'm also based in Adelaide at the Enfield Ecclesia. Haven't always been in Adelaide. Spent a few years in Canada, which was very nice.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is actually where I got to meet the speaker for the first time. So I've got a little bit of.
How old were you then?
I reckon 7, 8, pretty young. But we've gone there a few times since then. So that's how I've got to maybe have a little bit of a advantage on knowing the speaker when we interview him.
That's good.
No, it should be good, so I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been to many conferences other than Brisbane and Perth. I know you've been to a few.
Yeah, been to a few now.
Done the full conference tour.
Almost. Once it comes back around to Adelaide, that'll be the complete circuit.
Yeah, so, that's impressive.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic getting on board with conferences, and I think it's really good having a whole week with other people around your age talking about the Word of God.
Yeah.
To do something like that for a whole week is actually one of the best things you can do, because, you sort of start the week at conference, you talk about just everyday life stuff, and you sort of get to the end of the week and talking about the stuff that really matters.
Yeah. Like your depth of conversations gets better over the week, I reckon. But any highlights from... I reckon for me, going to Brisbane and Perth, I liked them both. I couldn't be able to pick a favourite because they were just so different, but I liked them just as equally. I don't know how... I was going to
ask you what your favourite one was.
Yeah, I reckon I could.
Oh, the location in New Zealand was particularly spectacular. That was super nice. And I know Brisbane was a really good conference.
Yeah.
That one was...
You just like the surfing in the mornings.
Oh, we did go for a couple surfs, but no, I think it was I don't know what it was. Just the conversations that we had, which were really good. There was a good focus at that conference. It sort of made me think that you don't sort of need all the bells and whistles necessarily to try and actually make it a successful conference. Not saying that they really tried to, keep the budget low or something. But no, there's
Brisbane Youth Conference Committee. It was an awesome week.
It was an awesome week, and I think it was because we had so many good conversations about the particular topic, and we sort of, I guess it had quite an impact on a lot of different people.
Yeah, no, I know coming out of that week for me, it definitely, not necessarily changed my perspective on things, but it definitely made me a lot more mindful of, the character of John, but just being mindful of God's presence in my life, which was something that really impacted me at the time. And I guess using that as a little bit of a segue into, the whole Stand Still podcast, I guess I wanted to start talking about in our first episode here, just discussing that whole concept of our podcast name, Stand Still. I don't know whether you've got any initial thoughts on that, because we're, basing it on the first 14 chapters of Exodus at conference, and just I thought podcast would be a good little way to tie in that whole Stand Still concept. I don't know if you got any initial thoughts on that.
It's a great title. I loved it when you first mentioned it. So if you need any like titles for topics or conferences, come to EJ.
No, don't. We're struggling as a committee to come up with a good one.
They'll probably poach it for the actual conference.
Oh, don't tempt them. They're trying.
I think it's really good because it's at probably the climax of the story when they're coming out of Exodus.
Yeah.
It's right at that moment where they're about to cross the Red Sea. And Moses turns to God, and God says to him that to stand still and see the salvation that he will bring to you today. And really, it's a lesson for our lives, particularly, to be able to take that moment to stand still, because so often I feel like we're not standing still.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
And that, because we were coming up with this whole concept of doing a podcast during the whole COVID lockdown and everything. And, one of the things that I particularly noticed was like I had all these additional superfluous things in my life that were going on. And I'm like, I actually don't need a lot of what, all these additional activities aren't actually super important. And it was probably just more of a time where, I don't know, you could sort of weirdly stop and kind of reflect on your life. And I don't know, a lot of talks also during that time pulled on that like self-evaluation, now that we've got all this time, what are we doing with it? I don't know if you felt the same way as I did.
It definitely was so good, I think, to be able to stop. And like you said, it did sort of give you a moment to reflect on sort of where you're at.
Yeah.
And it was good in a way, I felt like during that time we were just probably spending more time with just a closer group of people as well.
Yeah.
And you can really build those relationships there.
And draw on each other for like that support.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I was thinking about during that time is like how beneficial it is to sort of just take some time out like that. It's actually
just
kind of
just
funny.
Sealer your life.
Oh, that's a good one. That could be a title for
conference committee.
There you go.
Sealer. No, don't. No, I totally agree with what you're saying, and like with your point on the Exodus, I think that's kind of why I like it, because Exodus chapter 4, when God's talking to Moses at the burning bush, like he says, I'm going to show them all my wonders. And you could almost apply that to both Egyptians and Israelites at the time. Like for the nation of Israel, they were going to remember their God that they might have forgotten, and for the Egyptians, they were going to see that the God of Israel does actually exist. And then for it to finally like reach that final crescendo in Exodus 14, where they see that, they're like, wow, like we've just come from like destined to slavery for the rest of our lives to standing at the water's edge, and they're all like dead.
It's an amazing journey, and I think it's something quite incredible to see that God is creating memories, if you like, or he's creating like those landmark moments in Israel's history, so that then they can look back and see how God has worked in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the takeaways that I had from it is, from just even looking at the very start of this topic, is the fact that God sort of creates these moments, and I mean, it's pretty dramatic for them because it's, like miracles, and they're all like visible things that you can...
Well, they literally saw the Egyptians die in front of them.
It's crazy, and like, when have you ever seen just a massive sea just open up and there's millions of people that are able to walk through on dry land? Like, that's an incredible thing. And all throughout the rest of the Bible, it's it's reflected on as, remember that time when you were brought out of Egypt. Remember you were slaves in Egypt. Remember God delivered you with a mighty hand and outstretched arm.
Yeah, and that like you're saying, like it constantly throughout Scripture, it sort of refers back to that moment where they were like, remember where God delivered you, and just think about, like, in your situation, how much more he could do, or how much he could apply that in your situation if he could do what he did for the Israelites then.
I think that's an incredible thing, is that, you know, all of this we know is a type of what God's doing in our lives. The fact, and like I think it's 1 Corinthians 10 talks about it, how they were brought through the Red Sea, which is very similar to baptism, and the fact that we're taken out of Egypt, slaves to sin, and we've been brought into the promised land, but you've sort of got the wilderness in between before you get to the promised land. You know, there's sort of testing there, and you know things don't always go the way that you expect, but ultimately God's bringing you into that promised land, and there's so many lessons to take from it.
And like that whole idea of standing still, it's not something that you literally like, I'm going to just stand here and look at the world around me and do nothing about it. It's kind of like in your mind, it's something quite active, like you're really being mindful and like reflecting, I guess. Self-evaluation maybe is a better way of putting it, but just being constantly reminded of God's constant presence in your life. I think that's like a real another key aspect of standing still. And we'll talk about it in future episodes, that whole idea of like how you use your time and prayer and things like that, and how you use those things to really, I don't know, in the moment be really mindful of your position, I guess, in front of God.
I think God actually deliberately puts those moments into our lives to actually get us to remember. For example, like every Sunday, we come to remember what Jesus has done for us.
Yeah, totally.
Because he knows that we're so forgetful. And you can see that with the people of Israel, it's not that long after they're out of Egypt and they're suddenly, worshipping a golden calf, and they're sort of doing their own thing. And I mean, so often we think, they were, why on earth did they do that? But if we don't have those moments to reflect, I reckon we will end up doing the same. Human nature hasn't changed, I think.
We're still got the same proneness, just face the same challenges that they do, even though it's slightly different context. But I'm just like, as we're going through some of our notes here, just like that whole idea of in the New Testament, it talks about standing firm in holding fast to the truth, and that's like something that Paul sort of talks about throughout all his epistles and letters. Not necessarily the idea of standing still, but like even the spiritual warrior idea of like stand firm
and having done all to stand.
And just to hold fast to what you've first been taught. I mean, Hebrews 10, it talks to the believers at Jerusalem, like, they were being, I guess, abused and afflicted, and, they had a lot of trials, but, he's telling them to, like, just hold on, like, stand firm, hold on to what you've first been taught, because, for them, they faced a lot of challenges, and it was, like, his way of encouraging them.
Yeah, and it seems to be that in the New Testament it often talks about that, and the idea of holding on or standing fast. I noticed in the Old Testament there's a few different examples where that idea of standing firm or standing still is talked about. Isaiah
46 verse 8 to 10 there.
Oh, yeah. So that's a really good one because it talks... Oh, let's actually read it out. And remember this and stand firm. Recall to mind, you transgressors. Remember the former things of old. For I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me. Declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things not yet done. Saying, my counsel shall stand and I will accomplish all my purpose. I think it's really cool because it's talking to stand still, and then it presents this picture of God that he's declared the end from the beginning.
He's saying, like, why? Recall it to mind.
Oh, yeah, that's the same as what we were talking about before.
Yeah, like that's exactly what he's sort of saying. Like, why do you stand firm? Well, recall to your mind, remember me, like, that I'm your God, and there's no other God. I mean, it's not... Well, I guess it's applicable in our context, not that we necessarily may have other gods, but, things in our lives that are distractions. It's like, almost like during COVID, it was like, you got to almost apply that and just say, like stand firm, recall to mind, forget everything else that's going on. I'm your God, don't worry about anything else. I don't know. You can tell me if I'm pulling it a stretch here, but
no, I think it's that idea that comes out so much with all the looking at this idea of standing still. It's all about remembering.
Yeah.
And God's really giving us opportunities to remember the amazing things that He's done for us. Because when we get caught up with our own things we're doing, we end up forgetting about God. And creating even just those small moments, where we can stand still and reflect, is super helpful. Yeah, do you have like any particular place that you go to like stand still, or if you're taking a moment to reflect?
Like I wouldn't have a specific spot or like a wilderness per se, but I try and throughout the life have like these little cues in my own mind, just so that when I'm in like my work environment or previously before uni environment, and sometimes you get caught up in some of the things that are going on, you can just be like, just almost take a step back and just be like, remember who you are, what I represent. And it's not necessarily about, well, I haven't necessarily got a specific spot where I take a pause and reflect, but I try and sort of implement it more in my day-to-day activities. I don't know, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was actually, funnily enough, I don't actually have a particular spot, but
we'll work on it. We'll work on it. Maybe over our next few episodes we'll have to find each other a little wilderness.
We'll just have to find a little wilderness spot. Yeah, I've rather probably similar. I know one particularly, actually, even just going to the tram to work is, sometimes often where I take a moment to do a reading. It's a moment where, you've got to do it every day.
Yeah.
And you sort of take a moment to sort of think about God. And even when sometimes I'm outside for lunch, or even in the morning, whenever, and you look outside and you're like, man, it's a good day. And you just say like it's only a 5-10 second prayer and just like, thanks so much.
Yeah, and I think that's like
awesome day that you've given.
A good thing about being like just constantly reminded that God's in everything that you do. Even to that, when you're in the workplace to then when you are at a conference, is just as much like active in your life and present in that moment. But I think we'll put it at a wraps there, because we're just about to get into our interview with Steve McFarlane, speaker.
Looking forward to meeting him.
Yeah, any initial thoughts about it? Like I'm getting keen for it, but I'm
keen to meet.
Yeah,
it'd be I'm keen to see his preliminary thoughts on the topic.
See if his thoughts align with what we've just talked about. We'll maybe have.
Or maybe he's just read our notes.
Yeah, maybe. Righty, we'll see if we can join with him now.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. How you going?
Beautiful. Very good. We're up in we're in the abyss, North Ontario.
Oh,
so
no.
It could be good, could be bad.
If we see some static, we'll definitely let you know. Might just have to put a little bit of a jingle in here. Oh, hey,
how are you?
How you going?
We're good.
Good. Nice.
We're good. Good. How are you guys? Happy Saturday morning for you.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you.
It's crisp Saturday morning. It's like we've had a few average days here.
It's actually beautiful with nice blue sky and everything, and just coming into summer. I was going to say you guys are probably plunging into it.
Have you had much snow recently?
Yeah, you know what? It's mine. We've been pretty fortunate. We haven't had snow. We've actually had some of the hottest weather for November. The boys were in shorts and a t-shirt, just on the weekend, which was great, last weekend. But we went up north to a cottage, and so we're into the negative degrees. So pretty soon it'll be ice hockey on the rinks. So it'll be a big change pretty quickly here.
You have to give some of our listeners a bit of context where the cottage is. Where's the cottage in Canada?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. I don't even know what reference points, apart from, if you get Toronto on a map and you head about 3.5 hours north of Toronto. Oh, wow. So you're outside the city a good amount, and about 3.5 hours north, there's a number of lakes that you could go to. This cottage is on a lake called Salmon Trout Lake. There is neither salmon nor trout in this lake, but it's a great spot. So we come up and just try to enjoy some time away.
There was a few wishful fishermen at the time when they named it.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, thanks for joining us, Steve. Josh and I have been talking about this for a while, and we've been talking a little bit as well. We're super keen to talk to you and I guess get ready for conference, which is coming up in 2023, which coming up in 3 years' time. But
it's a relative term.
Yeah. It's all relative. Well, I guess just for a lot of people that may not have heard about you before, or not heard the name Steve McFarlane, maybe tell us a little bit about the McFarlane clan and about yourself, what you're up to.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So Stephen McFarlane, I also somewhere around the cottage here, my wife Riel is kicking around, as well as our 3 kiddos. So Ethan is our eldest, he's 5. Joshua is 4. And then sweet little Adeline Grace is 1. So it's we have our hands full. It's an awesome time, but it's a busy time. And we're over, on this side of the world. We actually live just south of Toronto. We're about 45 minutes south of Toronto, the land of snow and ice. And we both lived here our whole life. So grew up kind of in this area. Riel and I actually met in grade 7 or year 7, I guess is more culturally appropriate, speaking to Aussies. So
you guys are
yeah, that's right. And I mean, we, we've been married coming up on 10 years, which is pretty exciting. Riel she started coming out to the meeting and to CYC in year 12. I was baptized heading into that year. Riel was baptized about 2 years after that. We were married about 3 years after that. Been married, coming up 10 years. 3 under 6. McFarlane House is it's lively, it's active, and it's busy, and we wouldn't have it any other way. So
I bet it's super nice to get away with them on a holiday at the moment.
Yeah, you know what? It is nice. I mean, we don't get to enjoy, some of the breaks that you guys get over in Australia. Our summer's a little bit more condensed. So we try to take advantage of the weekends where possible. So, it's been great. I mean, anyone who's over this side of the world, stop in, say hello. You're always welcome to come on over.
We just got to wait for those border restrictions to ease, and then we can.
I know it's, and it's not funny, but of interest, we actually just went into a more severe lockdown today, unfortunately. So cases are spiking, so lockdown is back in. Thankfully, they don't impact religious gatherings, which is really, really awesome. So we're allowed 30% capacity at our ecclesial hall, but it's by the room. So kind of like, the main, congregation area, 30% in that room. And then, and so since we have Heritage CHC, so kind of like you guys have Heritage Adelaide, we have like a very small version of that over here. Yeah. So we have a bunch of different rooms that all kind of act as different classrooms. And we can have 30% in every single one of those rooms. So we actually end up getting most of our ecclesia out even during the restrictions.
That's not bad. We're pretty back to normal. I mean, for Enfield at least, our numbers can't quite, just in terms of the meterage and spacing, but by and large, we're pretty well back to normal, which is nice. Maybe I don't know if you mentioned what ecclesia you went to.
I don't think I did. So we're part of the Book Road Ecclesia. We were the Ewan Road Ecclesia, and then I don't know exactly, maybe like 10 years ago or so, we were looking to try to move to a bit of a bigger space. We kind of outgrown the area, the ecclesial hall we were in. And, fortunate enough, God blessed us with an opportunity to move into an old school building. And so we moved into the school building, a couple acres of land, which is awesome. And then, CHC. So the Christadelphian Heritage College was able to come in as well. So now we have that ecclesial hall as well as the Heritage College that runs, out of that same building, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, got some nice green space in the back. So Riel and I were married there. So it's an awesome spot and pretty centrally located for a lot of our brothers and sisters, which is awesome too. So
good. And I mean, speaking personally, I went to the CHC there when we were living there, and coming from a playground of just a car park and probably a few meters of grass to what we saw, plenty of lawn dairy and they're sport these days. No, that's
I get it. Yeah, it's funny when you compare it to what you guys have, but the kids don't know any better. And I think they have all the land they need, which is awesome. And it's a school of, I think they're just a little bit over 50.
Oh, no.
And so the space that they have is just awesome.
That's good. And what sort of age range is that at the school? Is that all the way from you guys call it, I was going to say kinder year 12 or?
Yeah, that's right. No, good question, Josh. So we actually we go from junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten, all the way up to year 12, grade 12. And so the high school, we don't have as many numbers in the high school as many, but it's been awesome. And I think what's super unique about it, you would experience the same thing, is you get the younger kids who start to get acclimated with the older kids and the older age groups. I mean, their morning devotions, you have everyone in the same room. And so even our youngest, Joshua, who's in JK this year, he'll come home and he'll talk about some of the kids in the high school. And, there's a little bit of that interaction, which is totally unique. You wouldn't get that anywhere else. Yeah. So it just kind of builds those relationships early on that are going to be, God willing, through the ecclesia anyways.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. We were talking earlier about literally in the last 15 minutes about our conference theme and the podcast theme of standing still and, that whole idea of, I guess, making time in your life and being constantly aware of God's presence in your life. I don't know whether I guess I'll just ask, what were some of your initial thoughts when you were asked about conference and to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's it was interesting timing because at our Book Road Ecclesia, we'd actually just gone through the Exodus in our midweek Bible class. So we went through the way we do our Bible classes. We pick one book and we go through it chapter by chapter. And each of the brethren kind of have different sections. Some will get one chapter, two chapters, split it up different ways. And we just finished going through the Exodus when the email came through. So top of mind, which is awesome. I think in terms of when you relate it to a conference, super applicable study, especially to the days in which we live. And I think especially for young people, very powerful study, right? I mean, you think about it, when you walk into this book, we've just had the jubilation ending Genesis of Jacob seeing Joseph again. And that's the bookend to this incredible story of redemption with Joseph and his brethren. And then the story of the Exodus hits. And it's it hits you square between the eyes, right? Because there's a new king, there's slavery, there's persecution, everything is completely flipped upside down. And yet, I think what you'll both kind of get through in the podcast is that the beauty of the Exodus is that there's this opportunity to observe the goodness of God in preserving his people, in offering deliverance, in working with his servants, with Moses, with Aaron, and then in demonstrating what's possible when you put your faith and trust in God. And I think for young people, where at times you feel like your world is flipped upside down, relationships and friendships and uni and all of these things, and your world can be flipped upside down. And I think the message holds true, stop, slow down, stand still, and allow God to work in your life in the same way that the children of Israel are going to. So I'm excited. I'm really excited about it. And it's very, very timely for us. So I hope you guys are excited as well.
Yeah. Speaking personally, I'm stoked. I'm so excited. I love that whole idea though, like you're saying, of just God just being just take a pause, reflect. And we were talking about that earlier.
We were talking a lot about how, God gives us those moments just to sort of stop and reflect, and particularly also to, remember what he's done in the past. And the Exodus ends up being one of those pivotal moments that's quoted so much afterwards. Remember, you were slaves in Egypt. Remember how I brought you out with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. It's something that's super encouraging. Yeah, have you? We're going to ask you about whether you've been to a few conferences as a young person in Canada. Have you?
Yeah, we've. Good question. It's we have the Manitoulin Youth Conference on this side of the world. I'm pretty sure it's pretty well known anyways.
Yeah.
And so, had an opportunity to attend. Ray and I were kind of going through in preparation for this. We kind of went back through and looked at a lot of the photos, and 8 years, had gone to conference 8 years. Had an opportunity to work on the workbook and lead the studies with Brother Brian Stiles just last year, or I guess 2 years ago, on Colossians, which we've just started in our daily readings, which is always exciting to go through a study that, you've really kind of you feel like you've lived in Colossae when you go through these. We've also attended, and we've attended Texas Youth Conference and California Youth Conference. So we love conferences. We love every aspect about it. Getting a number of young people together, really engulfing yourself in a study, working your way through it, and kind of having a laser focus through the given week. And I think for those that have gone to conferences, I'm sure you both kind of feel the same way, is you feel an attachment to that study for the rest of your discipleship. You feel like you've lived in those areas. And I think we'll go through the same thing. We'll feel like we've lived the Exodus, at least the early 14 chapters, which is kind of unique and a neat experience. So.
It's definitely super relatable. I know even with my Bible, like when I open it up and I can tell the sections that we've done at conference because there's suddenly
isn't that awesome, eh? I know.
section, and you recognize where everything is. You've got certain things coloured in, and it's sort of like an exciting topic every time you come back to it. Like there's things, the ones that we've had over here, like Philippians, Abraham, different sections like that or First Peter that we'll go back to. It's like you sort of remember what you've done at conference, which I really like.
Yeah. No, you get to that point in the daily readings where you get to that chapter and you're like, I'm an expert at this. Like,
I know, isn't that right? Eh?
It would be good. I'm very much looking forward to conference and like getting, not that we don't have an understanding, or we definitely do have an understanding of those chapters in Exodus, but we don't always necessarily focus on that whole period of time because we sort of see it as a Sunday school lesson a little bit. But to really get into its depth and make it applicable for all of us, and how you related to it earlier for a lot of the challenges that young people face. It would be great. I'm very keen.
I think the thing that's so good, and I was talking to DJ about this before, is that having young people together like around your same age for an entire week, being immersed in the Word of God, it's like nothing else you sort of get anywhere. It's like it's so beneficial. Because you start at the start of the week, you're talking about just everyday life things, and you sort of get to the end of the week and you're talking about all the things that are more meaningful in life, and it's really great.
I know you kind of go through this process right through the course of the week. It's totally true. Like the first couple of days, right? It's kind of like breaking the ice a little bit. And even you see it, the conferences that we have, by the end of the week, it's like, you're like your head's down. Even like late at night, you'll see like, little camp, camp lights on at different campsites, and they're into it. They're into the study. They're into like deep in conversation, pretty unique. We think, we've met, certain young people, brothers and sisters, and friendships for life just based on a week. That's kind of like the kickstart to those friendships, which, again, it's a unique experience. So, we're looking forward to it, even though, 2023 should the Lord remain away. We're excited to meet a lot of new faces, and also see a lot of people that, we know and love in Australia anyways.
Yeah, there'll definitely be plenty of new faces. We were talking about as well earlier, like that whole idea of, I guess, finding that spiritual mental wilderness, just finding a spot, it like geographically, or somewhere where or even just a mental trigger. I mean, we were talking about it, and then we both discovered that we both don't necessarily have a specific location where we
yeah.
Maybe you do, but like for us, we're just saying, those little mental cues, when you're at work, just to like maybe take a step back and just, remember and, just be aware of God.
Or even just taking a step.
No, go ahead, Josh.
Awesome day. Outside, and you just sort of take that moment to thank God for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's interesting. It's funny. We when we in the house that we have, my office, and it kind of doubles as a study, especially now, given that working from home for almost indefinitely at this point. But it's completely separated from everything else. I think that's pretty helpful, because otherwise the distractions are just always there. And I found what can be helpful, everyone has a phone nowadays. Just set an alarm. set an alarm, have it go off. It'll just kind of buzz. And that's sometimes you need those reminders, unfortunately, I need those reminders and, just to be thankful that way. And it's interesting in the context of like the podcast of, Stand Still, even just try it, just once this week, just try to just stand still and like power everything down. It's completely alien to us. And like close your books, turn off your phone, turn off everything, and just consider the work of God in your life. It's not the easiest thing to do. You'll find your mind is like racing in a million different directions. At least for the first time it was for me. But, you think about it, like we both, live in a country with no fear of persecution. We have access to the word of God completely freely whenever we want. We belong to vibrant ecclesias and, where the truth is really flourishing in Australia and in Canada. Sunday schools and youth groups and CYCs enthusiastic for the truth, probably seminars and sisters class, like all of those things. How often do we just kind of like stop and pause and just stand still to recognize what God's done in our life? And I don't know, for me personally and for Riel and I, like probably not enough. And when you really start to do it, I find it flips your attitude a little bit as well. Instead of seeing the negative in things and always, like you force yourself to have a bit of a different perspective, which is kind of neat too.
I found that sort of also in the lead up to doing this podcast, thinking about it a little bit more. And like you said, I tried it not too long ago, and I felt like really fidgety. Like you just sort of stay still just for a little bit, and you even just doing a reading or something, and just putting everything aside. And like after about 10 to 15 minutes, I was sort of like, other thoughts racing through your mind, and then you're like, oh, what about this? Or I need to get onto that, and it's just like, no, just take a moment just to, just
stop.
Yeah.
just stop for a moment. And
how do you think the children of Israel felt? Yeah.
Yeah. It like for us, I guess it's just so foreign just to do nothing, because everything in our life is programmed to, don't waste any second of your day, make sure you're doing something, with every minute you're given, so that you're constantly, I guess, progressing in life. But, God constantly throughout the Bible is like highlights that importance of just taking a step back, just those quiet moments, just to remember who he is. We're talking about the quote in Isaiah 46 verse 8 to 10, where it talks about like, stand still. Why? Because you need to remember who I am, and you need to pull this back to your mind. And, we're going to talk about it in future episodes of the podcast, just the whole idea of how we use our time and like prayer, and how that's something, just to go into go somewhere and just really have a I don't know, for me personally, when I'm, at a camp or something like that at night time, just going out underneath the stars and having those quiet moments of like just prayer with God. Like, I feel like that's where my relationship actually strengthens with him. So, yeah.
Good point. I mean, you think about it, like I was looking into it, ahead of the podcast. You sent me some of the references, and I like how you kind of called those out, because of the 8 times you'll find that stand still phrase, 5 of those, like just look at the context. And every time stand still is mentioned, right afterwards, you'll see it's not about us. It's not just, okay, stand still and consider your life. It's consider it in the context of what God is doing. And so it's, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Stand still and hear what God's going to command you. Stand still as I go reason with God. Like everything is about bring God back into the conversation. And I think what you've mentioned, Josh, like our lives are so busy. There's so much going on, and it's easy for God to kind of exit stage right in our lives, unfortunately. And so this is a good reminder to just bring it back to center. And so I hope, that's what the study will help us kind of recognize, right? And that's what you're forced to look at as you go through the first 14 chapters of Exodus anyways.
I was also interested getting maybe an insight into how do you approach doing a study like this?
Yeah, you know what? It's 2020, so I'll have a better idea probably in like late 2021. It's fun. So, I think it's a good point. The first thing, and all we've really been doing, Riel and I, is we try to jump into a study together, and just we've kind of added that to our daily readings to just kind of get in with the context, remind ourselves of the story, really try to live it, and then it'll be seeing where the threads pull us as you go through those first 14 chapters. what are the threads that start to really identify themselves? The more you get immersed into the Word of God, the more they just start to kind of come out. It's what, Brother Roger Lewis kind of talks about. You pull a thread here and you start to see it kind of chase a little bit further on. And so, we'll try to break it up that way. What are the big rocks that we want to focus on as we go through this study? And then trying to put it into how do we break it up? How do we break it up into classes? How do we break it up into discussion topics and into something that's going to be applicable for all of us as young people? So early on, it's just how much information can you start to really gather? So reading is probably like priority number one. And then start to really understand the context and understand, look up the words that you don't understand. Get the definitions, start to identify the places and identify the people. And then, we'll try to go from there and try to see where the study takes us. So early on, I'll be honest, we're up to chapter 3 in terms of more in-depth study, and then chapter 7, because that's what I had to do for Bible class here anyways. And then, we're looking forward to do the rest of it anyways. So
you got a bit of a head start. That's good. I thought for a second you're going to say 2022 is like, it's getting tight. Leave me
yeah, that's right. Oh, could you imagine? I know. Could you imagine?
It's actually so good. I found when you even just doing the reading previously, and you've sort of got it in sort of more front of mind, then you're listening to a talk on a completely different topic, and something will jump out, and you're like, that's not very similar to what I've been reading. Like, even just if you're not necessarily have done any in-depth study and you've just sort of got it more front of mind. I find actually even after a conference.
Yeah, you find like a talk completely unrelated to what you're personally studying. And then you're like, hey, that totally ties in with, what I've been looking at here. And it's just like,
I find that particularly after a conference, it's like the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks of talks, it's like everything relates.
Everything relates. I know. Is that funny?
Things jump out to you.
It highlights just the internal consistency of God's message, which is something that's just really powerful.
I was going to actually ask you as well, have you been out to Australia before?
Yeah, it's interesting. It brought back some hard memories, because I had an opportunity to go. My mom and dad and brother actually went in 2007. So my younger brother Mark, my mom and dad Ian and Judy McFarlane, they went in 2007. They booked my flight, but I was in my year 12 in high school, and I had calculus and chemistry in the same semester. Not smart. And some teachers just would not allow me to miss time or exams. And so I wasn't able to make it. And it's funny too, because Mark my brother always likes to remind me, because he went to Glenlock and he had to stay in, do you call it Swags?
Yeah. Beautiful part of the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Which is, it sounds like a broken tent essentially that just like kind of covers over your body. So he did not enjoy that at all. So I rib him about that. But then Riel and I actually had an opportunity to go in 2011. And so we went in 2011 for about 2.5 weeks. We went there for Lucas and Ashlyn Cooper's wedding. Ashlyn Crispin at the time, now Cooper. And it was awesome because we flew into Sydney. We stayed in Sydney for the weekend. And we stayed with the Leckies, brother James, sister of Jenny Leckie. And what was awesome, we never met them before in our life. And we show up at the Sydney airport, and we didn't have a picture. They didn't have a picture of us. So we took out our green hymn books, and we just started walking around the airport with our green hymn books. And we're like, someone will recognize the green hymn book. And sure enough, there's Anna Jenna. And she's like, are you like Christadelphians? She's like waving us down. And it was awesome. It was like the power of the green hymn book. And we had a great time. So we were only there for 2.5 weeks, but it was an awesome experience. We stayed at the Wigsell House, which was great. I got to go to Enfield. I remember pulling into that parking lot, and there was like a steel sheet structure in front of us. I was like, is this the Enfield Ecclesial Hall? I was so thrown off, but it was awesome. We had a great time. Kind of shrunk the ecclesial world for us, which was really nice, because we'd heard a lot about Australia, and obviously you had met so many that had come over for youth conferences and things like that. So, and then, God willing, 2023, add it to the list.
Yeah. Oh, we're looking forward to having you. Is there anything you're particularly wanting to do when you're over here in 2023? It's putting you on the spot, or, something that you want us to incorporate during the conference week that we just have to work at speaking to the finance guys and John to try and convince.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I want to ride the O-Bahn again. That was super interesting to me. Just like the bus, it was like a dedicated lane for the buses. I was so thrown off. That was awesome. We're big. We're like, I don't. Is that like the experience of Adelaide?
Yeah. that's kind of sad.
I haven't even done that. But,
you haven't? Oh, Josh, your mission. Let me tell you about it because it's quite an experience. Honestly, we're like Riel and I and our kids. Like we're people persons. Like we love just getting together with brothers and sisters and young people. That's what we're looking forward to. If I had to kind of stack rank it, like the studies, we're super interested in like how this is going to play out and what are going to be like the central elements for young people and how applicable is this going to be. And we're excited to dive into that. We're excited for the people and to meet, the young people and to see so many faces of those, we haven't seen in a number of years. We're excited for the events. I won't tease anything. We've seen some of the structure of what, the events might be for the conference. And that got us really excited. And then, quite honestly, we're excited for the weather. It'll be a beautiful time. It'll be beautiful weather. And then I guess number 5 would be like the O-Bahn, to ride that O-Bahn again. So.
That's even on the list, to be honest.
I know, that's right.
Well, like just before we wrap up, we've already been going for a little bit of time, which is absolutely flown, which is nice. Like we've been talking about a bit of the young people here, but what's some of the young people things going on like right now in Canada?
It's funny. I mean, we're definitely young at heart. Like we only live about 2 minutes away from the Ecclesial Hall. You could throw a cricket ball to it. And so we actually try to have the young peoples over every couple months for a bonfire, do the class, in the basement, and then I'll go outside. There's a lot of young people events and weekends, which is awesome in Southern Ontario and kind of like just, we're very close to the border into Michigan. And so, our CYC Epoch Road is about 25. We have about 25 that would come, on a weekly basis, and then kind of surrounded in Southern Ontario with a number of young people, which is great. And, during the summer months, you'd probably have, a CYC weekend every couple weeks, as well as kind of sprinkled in with some of the gatherings and the Bible schools. We usually have a challenge associated with it. So we'll have like the studies and then we'll have some kind of sport attached to it. Like the Frisbee challenge or the soccer challenge or the football challenge. So you'll have the studies and then we'll also kind of get all the young people together to play some sport afterwards, which is a lot of fun. So there's always something happening. You come over and there's always something happening. So there's a plug. We're coming your way, 2023. Come our way. Come enjoy some of the, the activities and fellowship we have on this side of the world.
Well, at least it's the sports that are the challenges and not the talks that are the challenges.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Good way to think about it.
Yeah, well, just before we wrap it up, because obviously mindful that you're on a family holiday and don't want to take too much of your time, but, before we wrap it up, to put you on the spot, is there one thing that you would pass on as some, I guess, words of advice and for young people hearing this and getting ready for a conference in a few years? And just, even just for their day-to-day lives, something that's maybe impacted you or something you've heard before.
Yeah, one thing... one piece of advice. I'll be honest, it's not an easy thing to distill it down to like one thing. But maybe one that like bubbles to the surface a little bit, especially given the days in which we live. Redeem the time. If I had to kind of pick a phrase, that we'll find, in scripture, like redeem the time. And I guess what I mean when we say that is like use the time you have now as a young person to get going in the work of the truth. And I say this honestly, like you'll never have as much time as you have now as a young person. And that may sound ridiculous to some, but life gets incredibly busy. Family, responsibilities, job, maybe you're on, maybe you start to join, other activities in the ecclesia and the time just starts to shrink. And so as a young person, redeem the time. Like now is the time to get a Bible study program and to really get it right. Now is the time to get committed to your daily readings if you're not already. Now is the time to get active in your CYC, in your ecclesia, in meditation, in a prayer life. You're setting a path for the next 10 years, should our Lord remain away. So hard to distill it down to one, but I'd say really think and plan out your time, especially as a young person, because that time will just really start to evaporate as you get older. And it might sound crazy, especially those that are in, the throes of uni. But believe me, and set a good pattern and a program now, and you'll be thankful as you progress.
Fantastic, and I think that that'll lead us well into one of the other podcasts as well.
Yeah, well,
we'll discuss on
later. But no, thanks very much for your time, Steve. That was really enjoyed it, and we're looking forward to having you. Well, maybe involved in a future episode here and there. Thanks heaps, and looking forward to 2023.
Great to meet you.
Awesome. Yeah, EJ, Josh, have a great morning and a great day. Good to catch up with both of you.
All right, so we've got our challenge segment. So we've, based on what we've been talking about, the idea of standing still, introducing this podcast, we've got a challenge that we'll sort of have each podcast to provide something that you can jump on board and do, and we'll probably start off a little bit easier, and then we can ramp it up as
make
we go.
It achievable for everyone out there.
We'll make it achievable, but I guess it's also a really good opportunity to start making the Bible something that's living and active in your life, not just something that you're listening to, but something that you start thinking about more, and something that becomes a bigger part of your life. So for this one, we were thinking that since we've been talking about finding a wilderness spot, finding a particular time to...
We've got to find a location.
I know, we don't have a wilderness spot at the moment, so I guess that's the first step for us.
We're starting at ground zero.
Yeah, it's good. We'll have to get an update on the progress after this.
Yeah.
So challenge is find a wilderness spot once a week for 15 minutes, take some time out and think about what God has done for you in your life.
Yeah.
So it could be, just a particular moment where you've noticed that God's working in your life, or maybe even something that you're thankful for. And the thought was to have, don't bring any distractions with you, like your phone or laptop or whatever, just whether it's in your backyard, whether it's, at the beach, whether, I don't know if it's in...
Somewhere nice and quiet.
Usually associate like nature with like a wilderness spot.
Yeah.
It could be your bedroom or in your car.
It could be.
It could be.
Or you talked about on the tram.
Oh yeah, on the tram.
Being quite a few distractions there though.
Yeah, I find that it's really good when nature's just really good, I think, because you're looking all around and seeing things that God has made. So 15 minutes, once a week.
Yeah.
Choose a time.
Yeah.
Choose a spot.
Yeah. Sounds good. I think the important thing is that you need to make it consistent. Like, it's not just about doing one sitting of an hour. Mm-hmm. Just 15 minutes once a week, and you can, make it something part of your routine, and it should be good.
Another thing that might be good as well is take a moment, even write it down. Write down just one thing during that 15 minutes, something that you're thankful to God for. Maybe there's a particular time that you've seen Him working in your life, or just something that you're thankful for, to sit down and remember God. I guess first few times it might be your thoughts probably start wandering and going off in all different places, but it's a good opportunity to start thinking about God, because then that starts flowing into the rest of your life, and having Him present and appreciative.
Well, like Steve said, supposedly we have the most time now, so now's a good time to implement that. But that's the challenge for everyone listening for our first episode. See how you go. We'll
give you an update on how we've gone with it.
We'll see. We'll let everyone know whether we've found a location or not. But thanks Josh for the first episode. What did you think of Steve just before we wrap it up?
I love chatting to Steve. He's super friendly. I'm super actually keen to meet him in person. Which will be good.
Yeah, he's seems very easygoing. So
some people have described him as the Tim Badger of Canada.
he won't like that. He won't like that.
He's it's super easy to get on with, and really looking forward to jumping into the studies of Exodus.
Yep. Alrighty, we'll leave it at that. Thanks everyone for listening, and till we meet again.
Thanks for listening to another Standstill episode, the official podcast of Adelaide Youth Conference 2023. To listen to past episodes, see highlight videos, and get all your podcast merch, visit our website. If this is your first time, welcome. You can find us everywhere you get your podcasts. The Standstill podcast is released once every month, so we can't wait to see you next time.